Now, I'm delighted to be joined by the chairman of Reform UK, Zia Yusuf. Zia, it was only a week ago that we were in Birmingham, a different part of Birmingham, for your party's conference. This week, the Conservatives are convening. The Conservatives here think that they can defeat the Labour Party in the next 4 or 5 years and become the government. But speaking to people at your conference, speaking to or hearing people on stage at your conference, you believe you can win the next election. With 5 MPs now, getting up to 326, is that a realistic possibility?
Tom, there's a big elephant in the room at that conference, which is that the Tories are done. The British people now see the Tory party for what they are, which is a party that will say absolutely anything to get themselves elected and then do the complete opposite when they come into power. If you just look at their record, I mean, people at home listening to these Tory leadership hopefuls must be shaking their heads in disbelief at how shameless it is. They promised in manifesto after manifesto to bring net migration down to the tens of thousands. Left office having exploded the size of the population, with that number at 750,000. They promised to reduce taxes. Supposedly they're the party of low taxes. They left office having raised the tax burden on hard-working British people to the highest level since the Second World War. They presided over a knife crime epidemic that leaves many people watching this programme too afraid to go to their local shop. They allowed wokery to run rampant throughout all the great British institutions, including and especially our civil service. They have a huge amount to answer for. I'm amazed, frankly, that they're able to say these things with a straight face. The last hopeful we just heard on your programme a moment ago was most of what she was saying was criticising her own government's record. Things like non-crime hate incidents, which is a wonderful but awful example of the catastrophes that the Tories inflicted on this country. The British people see them for what they are. They betrayed every principle that their voters elected them to uphold, and they're going to be consigned to the history books as a result.
Do you think that the government that is currently in place, the Labour government that got in on a historically low share of the vote with a historically high number of members of Parliament, partly because of the success of Reform UK and parties like it, do you think they'll be better or worse?
Well, they're demonstrably worse, but all Labour are the Tories on fast forward. You know, both parties essentially want to leave our border open, want to have no controls or sensibility or intelligence about the migration policy, preside over a knife crime epidemic because they're too cowardly to stop it quickly using stop and search, which we know works. Both parties are allowing our health service to continue to fall into disrepair to the point on being on the brink of collapse. So look, clearly Keir Starmer is worse, but I would go back to the point, given this interview is about the Tory conference, and that's where you currently are. The people who are responsible for inflicting Keir Starmer and his cronies on this country are the Tory party. They abandoned their voters, as you said. Forget the size of the majority. That is essentially an esoteric result of the first-past-the-post system. We know Keir Starmer won fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn. But that is the system we live under, Zia Yusuf. We know that this is the system that we live under. You're not going to change the electoral system from opposition. Is it really realistic to say that you're going to come anywhere close to being in government? Look at the Liberal Democrats. They took decades to get even to be the junior party within a coalition. You've said at your conference last week you want to follow the Liberal Democrats' strategy of winning seats. Does that mean in 40 years you might be the Deputy Prime Minister? Where we are now, Tom, is we live in a very different world to the one of years and decades past. We see things happening in the political arena across the world, including and especially in Europe, where we're seeing voters have never been more likely to switch votes relative to the previous election. And let's look at the actual numbers. Again, the 5 seats we won were a result of the first-past-the-post system. We won 14% of the vote share. And what I will say to people who support reform or are minded to support reform, we've demonstrated we can win seats, and also the seat return going from 14 to the 32, 33% that we need will be huge as a result of the system that we're in. It'll actually work in our favour in the next leg of the journey. And look at what happened in Europe. Marine Le Pen, very different politician to Nigel Farage. I want to be clear about that. She went from 17 to 34% in France in 2 years. That is unprecedented. Look at the betting markets. The betting markets have reform at 7-1 to win the most seats in the next general election. That's narrowed from 8 to 1 prior to our conference last week. And by the way, do you know what they have the Liberal Democrats on?
Betting markets aren't always a predictor.
But they had the Lib Dems on 100 to 1.
A predictor. I'm going to ask you about professionalisation now. This is your task as new party chairman to change the party, change its run, how it's run. Can I ask, is that why that Nigel Farage's long-term spin doctor, Gawain Towler, was sacked this week?
Well, look, we're in the process of professionalising the party. That's an internal personnel matter. Obviously, wouldn't be appropriate to talk about that publicly. What I will say is Gawain has been an incredible servant to the party. He's done a huge amount to get the party to where it is. And if you look at his commentary on Twitter, you will see that he continues to support our cause.
It's interesting because very few people have a bad words to say about Gawain. They said he was, or basically everyone has said that he was such an effective operator. I'm a bit confused about the decision.
I have not a bad thing to say about Gawain either, but as I said, it's an internal personnel matter. I'm sure you appreciate it's not appropriate to talk about those things publicly. OK, Zia Yusuf, chairman of Reform UK, thank you so much for joining us here on the Camilla Tominey Show.